The day after my father's funeral, I pulled into his driveway and found a silver Realtor lockbox hanging from the front door. The lilies from the service were still on the porch. There was cemetery dirt on my shoes. Through the front window, I could see a photographer moving the framed funeral program off the entry table so he could get a clean angle toward the staircase. A stager was fluffing pillows on the couch where Dad had spent his last 6 weeks sleeping upright because lying flat made him cough. I walked in without knocking. Denise, my stepmother, was in the kitchen in a cream sweater instead of the black dress she'd worn at the graveside. She had Dad's mug stacked in a box marked Donate, and she was telling a realtor with white nails, "We need the listing live by noon. Estate properties get stale fast." "What is this?" I asked. Denise turned like I'd interrupted brunch. "The house is going on the market. He was buried yesterday." "Exactly," she said. "There is no reason to drag this out." The realtor stepped forward and gave me a practiced smile. "Hi, I'm Sherry Cole with Oak Ridge Residential. Denise said there won't be any probate delay." Denise answered for me before I could speak. "There won't." I looked past her at the breakfast bar. Dad's pill organizer was still there. The hospice nurse's notepad was still beside the fruit bowl. Denise had not even cleared the evidence that he had just died. She had only cleared enough space for photos. "You couldn't wait 1 week?" I said. She folded her arms. "Caleb, I have bills. The funeral wasn't free. The condo in Sarasota isn't going to hold itself." That hit harder than she meant it to, because Sarasota had been her word for months. Sherry asked if I wanted a moment alone with Denise. I told her no. If she was comfortable putting a lockbox on my father's door while the sympathy casseroles were still in the fridge, she could hear the conversation she was helping create. Denise picked up a brass key from the counter and dropped it into her purse. It was the workshop key. Then she tapped the lockbox with one fingernail and said, "First showing is tomorrow at 11. Try not to make this uglier than it has to be." That was when I understood she hadn't decided to sell the house after Dad died. She had been waiting for the hearse to clear the driveway. My father bought that house 27 years earlier, 2 summers before I started middle school. It sat on a corner lot in Fairview Heights with a detached workshop, a cracked basketball pad, and a pecan tree that hit the roof hard enough to hear through the TV. He and my mom painted every room themselves. When Mom died, Dad stayed. When the mortgage hit zero, he framed the payoff letter and hung it in the workshop. Then he married Denise. She wasn't cartoon evil. Denise was polished, funny in company, and very good at sounding practical while she reached for something that wasn't hers. She sold medical devices, wore heels to backyard cookouts, and talked about money like weather. Rates are terrible. Inventory is low. People are leaving equity on the table. If you listened closely, she only got emotional around assets. I work at a title and escrow office. My days are deeds, legal descriptions, recording stamps, and people learning that one missing signature can delay a sale by a month. That made it impossible to ignore how Denise talked about the house. She never called it Dad's place. She called it the property. One Thanksgiving, she asked what homes with detached shops were getting per square foot. At Easter, she asked if a surviving spouse had to wait for probate to list. She smiled when she said it. I told her curiosity was how people got sued. Dad noticed it too. 3 months before he died, I was replacing a sink trap when Denise walked through with her phone up, filming the kitchen from 3 angles. "Natural light cells," she said. Dad was in the den getting chemo through a portable pump, and she was filming the backsplash. That night, he walked me out to the garage after she'd gone to bed. "She thinks I don't hear her when she talks numbers," he said. "You hear everything." He leaned against the workbench and looked toward the dark kitchen window. "She wants Florida. She wants quick cash. She does not want this house. She wants what this house can turn into." I asked if he'd talk to her. He gave me the half smile that meant talking was useless. "I'm not leaving her broke," he said. "Insurance is hers, retirement account too. But this house stays with the person who knows where the floor dips in the hallway." Then he shut the garage door and said, "Tomorrow, bring a legal pad. I need something done correctly." The next afternoon, I met my father at my office after hours. He came in wearing the same brown jacket he'd worn every winter since I was in high school, carrying a manila folder and coughing into a handkerchief he insisted was not dramatic enough for hospice. He wanted the house transferred outside probate. He wanted full control while he was alive, and he wanted the house to land with me the second he died. "Can that be done?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "cleanly." What I prepared was an enhanced life estate deed packet. Dad kept the right to live there, refinance if he wanted, even sell if he changed his mind. But if he died owning it, title moved to me without probate. The packet included the original signed deed, transfer affidavit, legal description, survey copy, and the recording cover sheet already filled out. Lena Ortiz, the senior closer in our office, stayed late to notarize. Dad signed every page slowly but steadily. He initialed the legal description where people always miss it. He checked the spelling of Denise's name in the marital status line and made me fix one missing accent mark before he signed again. When we were done, Lena slid everything into a green expanding file and asked where he wanted the original stored. Dad didn't hesitate. He pushed the folder across the desk to me. Not in the house, he said. If Denise finds paper she doesn't like, paper goes missing. I told him I could record it immediately. He shook his head. No, I don't need that fight while I'm still breathing. You hold it. If I change my mind, I tell you. If I die, you record it. Then he pulled a small yellow note from his wallet and tucked it into the front pocket of the file. I asked what it said. He said I could read it later if I had to. Before he left, he put his hand flat on top of the packet and looked me dead in the face. Do not try to beat her with a speech, he said. You'll lose. She can cry longer than you can argue. Beat her with paper. I carried that green file to the back room, put it in the bottom drawer of my locked desk, and kept the only set of signed originals in my possession. 11 weeks later, he was dead. By noon the day after the funeral, Denise was behaving exactly like he said she would. Dad died on a Thursday at 4:18 in the morning. Denise called me at 4:41 and managed to sound devastated for almost 30 seconds before asking whether I knew where he kept the deed binder for the house. Not his ring, not the Navy suit he wanted buried in, the deed binder. I told her I didn't know. That was technically true. The old binder was in his study, but the only papers that mattered were in my desk drawer across town. The next 4 days told me more about Denise than the previous 4 years had. She controlled the obituary wording, cut the visitation to 2 hours because people linger, and kept steering every conversation toward logistics. At the funeral home, she asked whether the flower spray could be picked up early because she hated paying to keep it overnight. During the meal after the burial, while Aunt Marlene was still crying into a napkin, Denise was whispering to a cousin about how fast houses in Fairview Heights were moving if they were priced right. I heard one sentence clearly because she said it too close to me. As is gets attention if the lot is good. Dad was not even in the ground 24 hours, and she was using Realtor language. After the service, I went back to the house to help gather his medications and call hospice for pickup. Denise met me in the hallway and blocked the door to his study with one hand on the knob. Not tonight, she said. I just need his paperwork. You need to let me handle my husband's affairs. My husband's affairs. She said it like ownership. There was a cardboard banker box on the floor beside her, already half full with files from the desk. Not sorted, just scooped. She had opened drawers before the family meal was over. Please don't do anything impulsive, she said, lowering her voice when Marlene came down the hall. The last thing your father would want is a fight over property. It was such a clean line, I almost respected it. She had already recast me as the son thinking about property too soon, while standing in front of the room where she was boxing up the property files. At the front door, she hugged me for the audience in the foyer. Her cheek stayed dry against mine. I know grief makes people territorial, she whispered. Don't make me defend myself. Then she closed the door gently like she was ending a polite visit. I sat in my truck replaying Dad's last instruction. Don't fight her with a speech. At 8:14 the morning after the funeral, my phone buzzed with a listing alert for Dad's address. I had set a watch on the property month earlier after one too many conversations with Denise about market timing. Turns out paranoia is just pattern recognition with bad manners. The listing headline read, Estate Opportunity in Fairview Heights, Motivated Seller, Showings Begin Saturday. There were 23 photos. The listing had managed to get my father's recliner out of the living room, stage the dining table with fake green apples, and crop the oxygen machine out of the den. What it hadn't managed to crop out was the folded walker by the hall closet and the condolence cards on the kitchen counter. I drove over and found Sherry Cole walking the exterior with a phone at chest level, filming a video tour. Need anything special highlighted? She asked Denise. Workshop, corner lot, clean title, Denise said. I got out of my truck before I decided to be calm. Take clean title out of your mouth, I said. Denise didn't even flinch. Caleb is upset, she told Sherry as if introducing a condition. He's taking this very hard. You listed a house you do not control, I said. I am his surviving spouse. That isn't the same thing. Sherry asked if she needed to be aware of some claim. Denise answered first. No, my husband died. I own his interest. Sherry said she couldn't pull a live listing without cause. Denise said, there, you see? This is business, not drama. She was using that word while Dad's navy burial tie was still draped over the downstairs chair where I'd left it. I asked why she was moving this fast. For 1 second, the mask slipped. Because condo season in Sarasota doesn't wait for morning, she said. Then it was back, hands folded, voice small. I need security, Caleb. Your father would have wanted that. Maybe he did. That's why he'd left her the life insurance and a retirement account. What he had not wanted was her turning his front door into a showing appointment before the casseroles were gone. When I left, the lockbox was already coded and live. First showing, Saturday at 11. That gave me less than 48 hours to make my father's paper louder than Denise's grief performance. By noon, Denise had sold the family a version of events where I was the one acting indecently. Aunt Marlene called first. She said Denise was frightened and trying to get her finances in order. She said I needed to stop circling the house like a creditor. My cousin Rob texted that if I thought Dad meant me to have something, there were courts for that, but the funeral week was not the time to harass a widow. A second cousin I hadn't seen since 2019 left me a voicemail about greed poisoning families. Denise understood something I usually forget. The first clean story people hear is the one they repeat, and her story was clean. Older widow, practical sale. Adult stepson shows up angry. Nobody needed extra facts to make that shape make sense. What made it worse was that I had one vulnerability she could use. Dad and I loved each other, but we were not public about it. After Mom died, I moved out young, worked too much, and kept most of my life private. I showed up when he needed repairs, drove him to scans, handled paperwork, and sat with him during the bad chemo days, but I did a lot of that quietly. Denise did the visible spouse work. She stood at the hospital desk. She signed intake forms. She cried where people could witness it. So when she told people I was trying to bully her into freezing the sale so I could grab the house, they had enough loose facts to believe her. I still tried the normal route once. I texted her, pause the listing 48 hours. We sit with an estate lawyer Monday. No shouting, no scene. She replied in under a minute, if you threaten me with lawyers while I am burying your father, I will remember it. Then another text, do not remove anything from the house. That was rich considering she'd already boxed half his study. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, a neighbor sent me a photo of two men loading folding chairs from the funeral into a van, while Sherry's sign crew pounded the post deeper into the lawn. White sympathy tent in the background. For sale sign in the foreground. Same patch of grass. When I got to the office after hours, I unlocked the back room, walked straight to my desk, and pulled open the bottom drawer that had been waiting for this exact week. The green expanding file was exactly where I'd left it. Bottom drawer, left side, behind an old Platt map tube and a box of toner nobody used anymore. I set it on my desk and opened it carefully. Inside were the originals, still clipped in the order I had assembled them. Enhanced life estate deed signed by Frank Mason, transfer affidavit, legal description, recording cover page, survey copy, 2 witness lines, Lena's notary seal, my father's initials in the margin where I had made him review the meets and bounds text because he always said land fights started with lazy descriptions. In the front pocket was the yellow note he'd tucked in there that night. It said, Caleb, if Denise puts a realtor in my kitchen before the casseroles are gone, record the whole packet same day. Love you. Dad. Then I got to work. First call was Lena. She picked up on the second ring and knew who had died before I even said Dad's name. I told her Denise had listed the house and asked the only question that mattered. Was the deed still good if it hadn't been recorded before Dad died? Delivery matters, she said. He signed it, handed it to you with instructions, and never revoked it. Recording gives public notice. It doesn't create the deed, so I can still file it. If you have certified death certificates and the rest of the packet, yes. I called the county vital records office and found out Denise had already ordered 10 certified copies the morning Dad died. She was faster with death certificates than I'd been with grief. I managed to reserve 2 remaining same-day copies and drove across town to get them before the counter closed at 5. The clerk looked at the order history and said, your family likes to be prepared. One of us does. Back at my office, I made working copies, checked every signature against our notary log, and put the originals in a leather document bag I use for courthouse closings. On the last page of the packet, Dad's handwriting looked steady. No wavering line, no hospice confusion, just Frank Mason writing his own name. At 7:30, my phone buzzed with a family group text from Denise. Someone entered the house without permission and went through Frank's papers. If anyone sees Caleb there, call me immediately. I looked at the deed packet on my desk and realized the widow everybody wanted me to go easy on had already started laying groundwork to call me a thief. Good. Thieves hate paperwork that keeps receipts. Denise spent Friday turning my father's death into a sales pitch and me into the obstacle. She changed the alarm code and texted me that any attempt to enter the property would be treated as trespass. She tagged half the workshop with blue painter's tape for an estate sale she claimed she hadn't decided on yet. A neighbor sent me a photo of Dad's table saw with a handwritten card tied to the handle. Works great. $150. His fishing tackle boxes were lined up on a folding table in the garage. The man had not been dead 72 hours. Then she went personal. Aunt Marlene called to say Denise was frightened because I'd taken legal papers from the house. I told her I hadn't taken one sheet from that study. Marlene sighed and said this was exactly why widows needed support because men got cold around property. At 2 o'clock, I got a voicemail from Sherry. Denise says you've been making alarming statements about ownership. If you have real documentation, please send it to an attorney, not to my sellers or buyers. We are proceeding as scheduled. My sellers, plural. Sherry had already made Denise sound like clear title. I drove by the house once that evening and watched a junk haul trailer back into the driveway. The men loading it took only obvious trash, but Denise was not cleaning. She was erasing evidence of a life before her. When she saw my truck, she walked to the curb with her phone already recording. "Everyone sees this, right?" she said loudly, panning toward the neighbors. I am being harassed during bereavement. I didn't give her a word. She wanted a clip she could send to Marlene and Rob. Instead, I looked past her at the garage. Dad's welding helmet was hanging on a peg with a sold sticker across the visor. "Saturday at 11 still works for the first showing," she said. "Try not to scare buyers this time." I got back in my truck and left. She was moving every piece at once. Fast listing, family story, alarm change, paper theft accusation, estate sale prep. County recording office opened at 8:30 the next morning on 4th Street. If I wanted that first showing poisoned before the first buyer crossed the threshold, I needed an instrument number before Denise finished her makeup. Before I went to the recorder, I gave Sherry one last clean chance to save herself. I called and asked to meet for 10 minutes at the coffee shop near her office. She showed up in a navy blazer with her phone face down on the table. "I'm recording a deed packet tomorrow morning," I told her. "If you keep marketing that house after notice, that's your problem." She leaned back and studied me. "Denise gave me the prior deed, the tax bill, and a death certificate copy," she said. "House is in Frank's name. She is the surviving spouse. Until somebody tells me otherwise in public record, I have authority from the person in possession. Person in possession isn't the same as owner. Then record whatever you think you have." I asked whether she had even run a preliminary title pull before putting a sign in the yard. That touched a nerve. "This wasn't under contract yet." "Exactly," I said. "You were fine advertising first and checking later." She tapped one nail on the lid of her coffee cup. "You need to understand how this looks from my side. Son from prior marriage shows up angry. Widow says he doesn't want her to have security, and nobody else in the family is backing him. That should worry you more, not less." Meaning? Meaning fast stories are usually covering for missing paper. For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't have a quick line ready. I took a folded copy of Dad's obituary from my pocket and wrote Lena's name and my office number on the back. "Call this notary if you want to know when the deed was executed, or don't. But if a buyer walks in there tomorrow and later finds out you marketed a house without confirmed authority, you'll own part of that mess." She looked at the paper and still didn't pick it up. "First showing is already booked," she said. "I can't unwind everything because you say you have something. I'm not asking you to believe me, I'm warning you." When I stood to leave, she finally took the obituary and folded it once. "If you record anything," she said, "send me the instrument numbers immediately. You won't need me to. Title will." Saturday morning, Speed was going to meet process at window 3 on 4th Street. I was the third person in line when the recorder's office opened. An old man with a farm lien packet stood in front of me. A woman with a stroller and a quitclaim deed stood behind me. Nobody there knew my father had been buried 2 days earlier, and I was grateful for that. Grief is heavy enough without having to hold it up for strangers while they judge your paperwork. When my turn came, I slid the leather bag under the glass and asked the clerk to process the deed packet, death affidavit, and supporting forms together. She started where every good clerk starts: signatures, legal description, notary acknowledgement, parcel match. Her nameplate said T. Givens. "Original executed when?" she asked. 3 months ago. "Grantor deceased?" "Thursday." She checked the certified death certificate, then the marital status line, then the transfer affidavit. For one awful second, she pushed the top sheet back toward me, and I thought Denise had somehow found a way to beat us with technical garbage. "You left the grantee mailing address blank on the cover page," she said. I printed my address in block letters, slid it back, and watched her stamp each page. Recorded deed, recorded affidavit, tax form accepted, filing fee $86.50. At 10:42, she handed me the receipt with instrument numbers printed across the bottom. "Public index updates in 15 minutes, she said. I thanked her, stepped into the hall, and called Lena. "It's done," I said. "Then let title do the talking." I sent the instrument numbers to Sherry and Denise in the same text thread. Recorded at 10:42 a.m. Do not show or market property as if Denise owns it. Denise responded before I reached the elevator. "What did you file?" Sherry sent nothing. By the time I got to the parking lot, my phone rang with Denise's name. I let it ring out, put the phone face down on the passenger seat, and drove straight to Dad's house. The first buyer appointment started at 11. At 10:58, Sherry's SUV was already in the driveway, and a young couple was standing on the porch reading the flyer box while the new lockbox hung there like Denise had bolted a price tag onto my father's front door. I parked at the curb, took the recorder's receipt from the console, and walked toward them. This time I wasn't asking for a pause. I was bringing stamped county paper to a showing Denise had no right to hold. Sherry saw me coming and her entire posture changed. Not panic yet. More like the exact second a pilot notices a warning light. Denise was in the doorway in a soft gray dress, widow costume for buyers, and the young couple on the porch had already stepped inside to admire the foyer. "We are in the middle of an appointment," Denise said. Then you'll want this fast. I handed Sherry the recorder's receipt and the stamped first page of the deed. She read the instrument number, then the grantee line, then read it again slower. What is this? The buyer asked from the entry. Sherry didn't answer him. She looked at Denise. Denise didn't look at the paper at all. She looked at me. He filed something fraudulent. Sherry finally found her voice. Denise, was there a transfer instrument executed before Frank died? No? Careful, I said. Lie to family if you want. Don't lie to your agent in front of witnesses. The buyer couple had gone very still. Probate, fraud claim, title cloud, not their dream sunroom anymore. Sherry asked if we could step outside. I said no. Denise had been comfortable staging a dead man's house in public, so we could have the ownership conversation in public too. This deed shows a reserved life estate to Frank Mason, with a remainder to Caleb Mason upon death, Sherry said, reading, executed April 12th, recorded today. Denise laughed once, sharp and fake. Anyone can type paper. I held up the county stamped copy. Not everyone can get the county to stamp an original. The husband of the buyer couple cleared his throat. So who owns the property right now? I do, I said. His wife took one step back toward the porch. Then why is she showing it? That did it. Sherry closed her folder and turned to the couple. I need to suspend this showing pending title review. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Denise stepped toward her. You can't do that. Watch me, Sherry said. The buyers left without another word. The husband tossed the flyer into the yard waste bin on his way to the car. Sherry pulled the sign writer from the post, yanked the key from the lockbox, and told Denise she'd be contacting her broker and title immediately. Denise waited until the SUV was backing out before she turned on me. If I lose this sale because of your stun, I will bury you in court. I looked past her into the foyer. Dad's boots were still by the umbrella stand. You already tried to bury me with a listing sheet, I said. Court sounds cleaner. Monday morning, the contract died exactly the way Lena said it would. Sherry's broker had opened a title order as soon as the first showing ended, probably hoping the recorded deed was some filing error. Instead, the preliminary title pull showed the house vested through Dad's recorded life estate deed straight into my name on his date of death. No probate ownership gap, no widow control, no clean path for Denise to sign a valid sales contract. The buyers withdrew before lunch. I know that because Denise called me at 12:17 screaming hard enough that I had to hold the phone 6 inches from my ear. They were ready to offer list, she said. Do you know what you've cost me? A sale you didn't own. I already put a deposit on a condo. There it was. Not grief, not security, a condo deposit. She'd used the expectation of Dad's house money before the house was even lawfully hers to spend. When I asked how much she'd committed, she hung up. An hour later, Aunt Marlene sent me a 3-paragraph text about compassion, widowhood, and how humiliating this had been for Denise. Not one sentence asked whether Denise had any right to list the house. Then Denise went wider. She emailed half the family and copied me on a message claiming I had secretly recorded a predatory deed while Dad was medicated and confused. She said I had waited until after the funeral to spring it because I knew the document wouldn't survive scrutiny. She called it elder exploitation in writing, which was reckless enough that even Rob texted me, "This is getting serious." Good. Serious is where paperwork wins. At 3, Sherry called. Her voice had lost every trace of sales sparkle. My broker terminated the listing, she said. We also need reimbursement for photography, staging consult, and marketing spend. Denise signed the representation agreement individually. Before hanging up, she asked one quiet question. Did Frank know what he was signing? I thought about Dad correcting the accent mark in Denise's middle name before he initialed the deed. Better than Denise knew what she was listing, I said. That evening, Denise texted one final line. If I lose my condo deposit, I will come after everything you have. I read it twice and forwarded it to a lawyer friend from an old closing dispute. By 8 o'clock, I had a referral to an estate litigator named Mara Singh. Denise hired a lawyer before the week was out. His name was Paul Grayson, and he left me a voicemail saying his client intended to challenge the deed on grounds of undue influence, lack of capacity, and fraudulent procurement. He suggested that if I executed a voluntary quitclaim back into the estate, everyone could avoid a very public dispute. Public dispute was rich, coming from the side that had tried to sell the place before Dad's obituary ran in the Sunday paper. I met Mara Singh that afternoon in an office above a dentist's practice. She wore no-nonsense black, took notes on yellow legal paper, and interrupted only when a detail mattered. I gave her the green packet, the recorded copies, Denise's texts, the listing screenshots, and the family email accusing me of exploitation. She spent 10 minutes reading in silence. Then she looked up and said, "This is not a bad packet. This is an excellent packet." Mara walked me through what made it strong. Signed original deed, proper notary acknowledgement, 2 witnesses, full legal description, delivery to grantee while Dad was competent, recording after death consistent with a reserved life estate transfer. Dad's note wasn't the deed, but It destroyed the idea that I surprised him or manufactured intent after the fact. Even the timing helped us because the packet was executed months before hospice. What about capacity? I asked. They'd need medical proof he was compromised on this day, not generally sick later. Also, your notary can testify. Your witness can testify. And if your stepmother says he never intended this, I get to ask why she rushed a listing before confirming title. Judge's notice agreed. That was the first time all week I felt something other than anger. Paul emailed that night with a formal demand letter. He called the deed suspect, referred to Denise as the lawful surviving spouse, and offered mediation if I would suspend any effort to take possession of the property. Mara told me to accept mediation immediately. Why? I asked. Because people lie most clearly when they think one more performance will fix the problem. The mediation was set for Wednesday morning. After I left her office, I sat in my truck and opened the green packet again. Tucked behind the yellow note was a copy of the sign-in sheet from the day Dad signed. Frank Mason, Lena Ortiz. Witness 1, Witness 2. Time in 5:42 p.m. It wasn't flashy proof, it was better. Ordinary proof is what collapses dramatic lies. The mediation lasted 40 minutes before Denise talked herself into a corner. Mara and I sat on one side of the conference table. Denise and Paul sat on the other. Denise wore pearls and brought tissues she barely touched. Paul opened big. He said Dad had been frail, medicated, dependent on me for paperwork, and vulnerable to suggestion. He said Denise believed the deed was either fabricated or obtained through pressure when Frank could no longer understand legal consequences. He said the decent resolution was to unwind the transfer and to put the house into the estate. Mara let him finish. Then she slid the original packet onto the table, one page at a time. People get loud around accusations because accusations are cheap. Original signatures shut people up. Mara asked Denise whether she had known Frank met me at my office in April. Denise said no. Mara asked whether Denise had searched Frank's study for ownership papers after his death. Denise said she had only been organizing. Mara asked why. If Denise truly believed there were no transfer documents, she ordered 10 certified death certificates on the day Frank died and signed a listing agreement within 24 hours of the funeral. Denise stiffened. Because I had to protect myself. From whom? Mara asked. Denise glanced at me. From being left with nothing. Mara reached into the front pocket of the file and set Dad's yellow note on the table. Paul read it first. Then Denise leaned over and read it too. If Denise puts a realtor in my kitchen before the casseroles are gone, record the whole packet same day. Love you, Dad. Denise went pale. The note named the move she had already made. Paul asked for a private caucus immediately. When Denise came back, the Widow Act was gone. He promised I would be secure, she said. He left you secure, I said. He didn't leave you this house. Instead, she said, I thought if I moved fast enough, you wouldn't stop it. That sentence bought me more than any judge's lecture would have, because she had finally admitted the truth in front of her own lawyer. Once Denise admitted speed was the plan, the legal fight lost most of its teeth. There was still paperwork, of course. Paul filed a notice preserving her right to review the transfer. Mara answered with the deed packet, Lena's affidavit about execution, the sign-in sheet from my office, and a short memo that read like a polite funeral for Denise's case. Frank Mason owned the house before marriage. He executed a valid reserved life estate deed while competent. He delivered it to me with instructions. He died owning the life estate. Title transferred by operation of the recorded deed. We still had one final meeting because Denise wanted someone official to tell her no. It happened in Paul's office. No performance tissues this time. Just paper, coffee going cold, and one woman realizing she had mistaken momentum for ownership. Mara read the operative paragraph aloud. Grantor reserves unto himself a life estate for and during his natural life, with full power of possession, use, and control, and upon grantor's death remainder shall vest in Caleb Mason. Then she read the execution date, then the notary block, then the witness names. Paul asked whether Dad had ever revoked it. No, Mara said. He asked whether there was any competing deed. No. He asked whether Denise had any basis to claim the property was marital. Mara shook her head. Premarital ownership, separate title, no conveyance to spouse, and no defect in transfer. That was the moment even Paul stopped looking for angles. Denise tried one last turn. So I just get thrown out, Mara answered before I could. You receive what Frank left you outside this property. Insurance proceeds, retirement account beneficiary distributions, personal property that belongs to you, but you do not get to sell a house you never owned. Maybe from her side I had taken something cruel away, but cruelty would have been letting my father's last clear decision get run over by a lockbox and a listing photo. Paul asked if I was willing to give Denise 30 days to vacate in exchange for dismissal of all claims. I said yes. I didn't want a war. I wanted the house out of Denise's mouth. When the papers were signed, she stood, gathered her purse, and said one thing on the way out. He always trusted the quiet ones too much. Maybe Quiet is still the one that showed up with the signed originals. I went back to the house 32 days later with a locksmith, a moving crew, and a stomach that felt like bad concrete. Denise had packed. She had also left little traces of what she had intended to do with every room. Blue tape measurements on the living room floor where staging furniture was supposed to go. A note inside the kitchen drawer that said, "Swap brass hardware." Dad's recliner shoved into the workshop because it ruined flow. His wedding picture with my mother had been turned face down in a hall closet. That last part made me sit on the stairs for a minute. There is something mean in the body about finding proof that someone had been planning how to erase your parents from their own rooms while they were still warm in memory. She met me in the foyer with 2 suitcases and a legal folder. "I'm taking what is mine," she said. Mara had advised me to inventory everything in plain view, so I did. Her jewelry, clothes, luggage, the blender her sister gave them at the wedding, the framed beach print she bought for the guest room. Then I noticed Dad's gold Hamilton watch sitting in the side pocket of her tote. That stays. He wore it because I bought it. Grandpa bought it in 1978. She looked at me, then at the moving guys waiting with their straps and dollies, and slowly set the watch on the entry table. After that, the inventory got easier. The last surprise was in the workshop. She had boxed Dad's handwritten maintenance logs with a stack of broker pamphlets and a folder labeled Sarasota 2026. Brochures, floor plans, deposit sheet. She had been shopping her next life before the funeral flowers browned. I didn't say anything when I found it. I just set the folder back in the box and wrote it down on the inventory line. At 2:40, the locksmith changed the front and back locks. Denise stood on the porch holding her purse to her chest and looked at the house like a missed flight. "Enjoy the museum," she said. Then she got into a white crossover packed with suitcases and drove away. When the moving crew left, the house went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycle on from the kitchen. No staging notes, no lockbox, no widow story. Just the rooms my father had actually lived in. The apologies came in sideways. Aunt Marlene showed up first with a crock pot I didn't need, and the expression people wear when they want forgiveness to happen without using the word sorry. She stood in Dad's kitchen, looked at the bare patch in the yard where the E4 sale sign had been, and said, "I didn't know she had the realtor lined up before the burial." I asked how early she knew anything was moving. Marlene stared into her coffee. "Denise asked me Thursday night if I knew anybody who'd stage older homes cheap. Frank died that morning. Rob called that weekend to say Denise had asked him for the number of a junk haul guy before the funeral home had even confirmed the visitation time. One cousin admitted Denise tried to get him to witness a seller disclosure by telling him, 'Caleb won't understand the paperwork anyway.' Sherry emailed a final release for the listing file and made it clear her brokerage was debating whether to chase Denise for costs. Even Paul sent Mara a short note saying his client would not be pursuing further action. Bit by bit, the clean widow story rotted. Not because I gave speeches, I didn't. I simply let the order of events do the work. Death certificate orders, listing timestamps, recorded deed, mediation note, Sarasota folder. Once people saw the timeline in sequence, Denise's version stopped sounding practical and started sounding hungry. Marlene wandered into the hall and ran her fingers over the doorframe, where Dad had marked my height in pencil every school year until I hit 6 feet. "Your father talked about this house like it was part of you," she said. I wanted to ask where that understanding had been when she was texting me about compassion for a woman who had put a price tag on his tools. I didn't. Before she left, Marlene handed me a small brass key. "Found this in my purse after the funeral," she said. Denise asked me to hold it while the photographer was there. It was the workshop key, the same one Denise had dropped into her purse in front of me the day I found the lockbox. After she drove away, I unlocked the workshop and stood in the doorway smelling sawdust, motor oil, and the stale coffee Dad used to forget on the bench. The drill press still leaned left. The radio still only got one country station if you smacked it once. People had spent 2 weeks trying to turn my father into a probate problem. The workshop still knew him as a man with calloused hands and bad coffee. I found the longer note in Dad's study a week after Denise moved out. It was inside the green packet behind the survey copy, folded twice and clipped to the back page with the same black binder clip he used on utility bills. I had been so focused on the deed, the affidavit, the recording steps, the fight, that I hadn't read past the yellow joke note until the house was finally quiet enough for me to sit still. The note was one page written in his square block handwriting. "Caleb, if you're reading this, then Denise did exactly what I thought she might. I don't need you to hate her for me. I only need you not to fold because somebody cries louder than you. I left the house to you for a simple reason. You were here. You fixed what broke. You knew where the shutoff valve was. You knew the dogwood out front drops limbs in April and the back bedroom window sticks in humidity. A house should go to the person who treats it like a place, not a payout. There was more. I hope she takes what I left her and builds something decent. I hope you keep the workshop. I hope you quit apologizing for being quieter than other people. Quiet is not weakness. Quiet just means you wait until you know where to put your hands. I read that last line 3 times. Then I looked around the study. His reading glasses were still on the side table. The indent from his desk chair was still in the rug. Sunlight was hitting the lower shelves where he kept every owner's manual he'd ever refused to throw away. The room felt less like evidence and more like him for the first time since he died. I took the note to the kitchen and sat there until dark with one lamp on over the sink. No TV, no phone. Just the creak the house makes around 7 when the temperature drops and the hallway boards settle. I'd spent 2 weeks telling myself the fight was about title because title was the clean part. Title has margins and stamps and dates. Grief doesn't. But sitting there with Dad's note, I finally admitted the uglier truth. Denise selling the house that fast had felt like she was trying to prove my father could be packed up and converted before I even caught my breath. The deed saved the property, sure, but the note saved something meaner in me from taking over. He had seen this coming, and he had still trusted me not to become ugly while I stopped it. That trust felt heavier than the keys in my pocket. It also felt like home. I kept the house, not because I needed to win, not because I wanted some big revenge ending where Denise called crying from a failed condo lease, and I got to savor it. Real life usually cheats you out of endings that neat. She moved to Florida anyway, using money Dad had actually left her. Family still talks to her in small doses. The world did not stop because she tried to turn grief into a sale. What changed was smaller and more permanent. I took Sherry's lockbox off the front door and threw it in the workshop scrap bin. I put Dad's recliner back in the living room, right where the afternoon light hits the left armrest. I rehung the payoff letter in the workshop after Denise's moving crew knocked it crooked. I kept the brass workshop key on my ring again. I fixed the hallway window that always swelled in humid weather. Exactly the one Dad mentioned in his note. And when it slid clean for the first time in years, I laughed out loud in an empty house like an idiot. People still ask whether it was worth all the conflict for just a house. That question tells me they don't get it. It was never just a house. It was my father's last clear sentence in paper form. It was proof that showing up matters even when nobody claps for it. Denise thought the loudest move would win because loud moves usually scare decent people into backing off. All I really did was refuse to let a lockbox and a listing sheet speak over a dead man's signed choice. Some nights I sit in the workshop with the side door open and the radio low and think about how close that place came to becoming staged square footage with fake apples in the kitchen and strangers calling the study a flex room. Then I look at Dad's note folded in the top drawer of the bench, and the feeling that comes is not victory. It's relief. Relief that I didn't let somebody else's rush rewrite what he meant. Relief that paper, when it's done right, can still protect a memory from a faster liar. Relief that the house sounds like itself again. If you've ever had a family member move this fast around money after a funeral, tell me I'm not crazy in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe.